Welcome to the Capstone Presentation for Cross-Cultural Management at Stamford International University, Thailand. This Capstone Presentation consists of two parts. Part 1 deals with the PESTLE Analysis of Mexico and focuses more on the micro, which underlines the rising trends, as well as the investment risks and opportunities for businesses to operate in the country. And Part 2 is about the interview recorded with an Associate Director for International Business Management Program, as well as lecturer at Stamford International University. Mexico has proven to be a fairly stable nation. According to Country Watch, Mexico scored 7 out of the 10 possible points concerning its political stability. The country's current ruling party is Institutional Revolutionary Party. This party has claimed power for over 71 years, since 1929 to 2000. Risk. Eurasia placed Mexico 4th in its top risk 2018. According to the report, 2 of the biggest political risks Mexico will have to face is renegotiation of NAFTA, the USA, and the upcoming presidential election that will take place on the 1st of July. According to Eurasia, the firm said that a successful renegotiation is still possible, but warned of the consequences of not reaching a new deal or a decision by US President Donald Trump to terminate the 24-year-old agreement. This can be a possibility to creating uncertainties to billions of dollars worth of economic activity in the region. Eurasia also mentioned that the first risk will likely affect and influence the country's upcoming presidential election. According to the firm, if Manuel Lopez Obrador were to win the July 1st election, an AMLO presidency, particularly if NAFTA's future remains uncertain, would bring significant market risk to Mexico. Many new possible opportunities could be agreed and could be implemented by presidential candidates during elections. This is when the people can bargain and choose for the best candidate who they think best represent their country. In the July 1st election, Mexico's presidential candidates have agreed to fight off drug-related crimes and improve Mexico's economy. With combination to having open market economy, businesses will find it easier to operate, grow, and succeed. Despite having some possible problems to the country's political stability, Mexico still continues to be an attractive place for investors. Based on economic data, Mexico has a GDP of over $400 billion, making it the second largest economy in Latin America. The country earned a 65% on its Economic Freedom Index, but is supposedly recognized as the 40th most corrupt nation in the world, with a score of over 29 on its Corruption Perception Index. Mass migration, a shortage of resources, high unemployment, and inconsistent growth are the major risk factors to foreign investment, which could significantly affect Mexico in the long term. However, some benefits include low-cost production, rapid economic growth, increased exports, and increased inflows of foreign direct investment. Mexico has a relatively high literacy rate. More than 90% of the Mexican population can read and write, and a high percentage of it owns at least a high school degree. Despite the fact that in Mexico having a university degree helps a lot in finding job opportunities, this does not, however, guarantee to find one. Another major social issue that faces Mexico is undoubtedly the infamous violent crime related to drug cartels that have been shaking the country for a few decades now, and the homicides rate keeps jumping year after year. Mexico still remains as one of the most violent countries in the world, as Donald Trump claimed in June 2017 via Twitter. Despite these challenges, Mexico's economy keeps on growing and shows an important decrease in the GDP throughout the years, and an important amount of the country's GDP is spent into the population's education. Internet usage in Mexico has reached to approximately 91.6 million by 2021, which means that Mexico's use of internet is on a steady rise. Mexico's internet digital population by January 2017 recorded over 70 million active users. More than half of the population has access to the internet. Moreover, as of 2016, the country was ranked as the 10th in the number of active internet users worldwide. Internet on a daily basis is being used by the Mexicans on a scale up to 81%, and the most common activities online are social networks such as Facebook, which is by far the most popular website visited by Mexico's population. In 2017, a research showed that there are over 60 million internet users in Mexico. This is expected to grow by 2021 to 70 million users. Mexico is also the country with the highest number of users within Spanish-speaking countries, and the device most used for internet access is by far smartphone. In 2016, 58.5 million mobile users accessed to the internet by smartphone. In addition to that, mobile internet users count as 50% of the total population. The number of digital dividers in Mexico is also expected to grow dramatically from 7.19 million in 2016 to around 14.88 million in 2021. This list is drawn from the 70 countries that were included in both 2017 and 2018 indices. Some indicators have been improved in the 2018 index. According to the Inclusive Internet Index, measuring success 2018, Mexico is in the middle of 10 Latin American countries, overall ranked at the 26th position out of the 70 globally. Mexico's overall performance is abutmented by a third-place ranking for readiness to connect. To that, the country showcases top scores for e-inclusion, broadband funding, and spectrum policy. Mexico's relevance is another firm point, ranking 29th out of the 70, but affordability struggles from a linked competitive environment. Mexico has also been highlighted within the Latin American countries for its little to no internet censorship, leaving its young population to direct access and increasing threat to violence against reports, media outlets related to drug trafficking. Mexican law provides for freedom of speech and press, and the government generally respects these rights in practice. There are no government restrictions on access to the internet or credible reports that the government monitors email or internet chat rooms. Individuals and groups can engage in expression of views where the internet, including the email. The OpenNet initiative found no evidence of internet filtering in 2011. Mexico was classified as the partly free in the Freedom of the Net 2011 report from Freedom House. Transnational criminal organizations exercise an increasing influence over media outlets and reporters, at times directly threatening individuals who publish critical views of crime groups. As citizens increasingly use social media websites such as Twitter and Facebook to obtain and share drug-related views, violence against the users of these sites is rising dramatically. Threats and violence lead to self-censorship in many cases. Mexico has reached a leadership place at the world level. During the last years, it has reached an everyday more important role in the growing world industry of information technology. This complex industry encompasses a wide range of products from software programming and development to computer equipment, becoming the relevant variable of the knowledge society and the main driver of our time's technological and communications revolution. This year, the industry's number will close at an unprecedented level of $4.2 billion in service exports. Undoubtedly, Mexico is the fourth global exporter in software development and top number in Latin America, positioned only behind India, the Philippines, and China. Advances reached in this Mexican industry are the result of an intentional collaboration between the Mexican government and the industry, mainly through the creation of a support program called ProSoft and an initiative to promote the country as a world-class alternative for nearshore and IT solutions. That has certainly given as a result a Mexican service offer, cost competitive and with the highest quality. Mexico in the past few years has launched an earnest program of legal and structural reforms that has led Mexico into improve its economy drastically and as a result increasing the flow of foreign investment. The country throughout the years have been completely open to foreign investment, and absolutely Mexico has seen the advancement of its work by being the top beneficiary of foreign investment in Latin America. In 2014, the Mexican Congress issued various reforms to foster economic growth in different industrial sectors. Within those reforms, Mexico eliminated foreign investment restrictions that influenced the telecommunication and financial sectors. Under NAFTA and the World Trade Organization Agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, Mexico is obliged to implement certain standards for the protection of intellectual property, as well as procedures to address infringements such as piracy and counterfeiting. The Attorney General's office is responsible for investigating and prosecuting of intellectual property right crimes. The Mexican Institute of Industrial Property is the government agency responsible for administrative enforcement of intellectual property rights. However, Mexican intellectual property right laws are often poorly understood by both law enforcement agencies, and there is a lack of expertise in the court system. Mexico's legal environment has also improved through its membership in international organizations such as the NAFTA, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the World Trade Organization, and the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. Mexican participation means that Mexico is committed to the development of a competitive field in trade and investment with internationally accepted rules. Mexico is the second largest economy in Latin America, the 14th economy in the world. Goldman Sachs predicts that Mexico's economy will be the 8th in the world by 2050. To fulfill this ambition, there will be an upgrade in the transport infrastructure, something the Mexican government understands and is committed to. The current infrastructure plan for the Mexican government from 2013 to 2018 consists of 149 projects with an investment of 30+ billion USD. Also, smart mobility in Mexico will experience significant growth in the coming years. Mexico City, one of the largest and once most polluted cities in the world, is demonstrating that an agenda shift towards environmental sustainability is possible. The transportation and mobility components of Mexico City's Green Plan, or Verde Agenda, was designed to lead the city towards a state of eco-mobility, was launched in 2007. The plan is based on a multi-component strategy to reduce traffic congestion and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The strategy has resulted in a set of programs to improve and expand public transportation systems, as well as offer more cycling and walking options. Citizens are being educated about the importance of sustainable mobility's role in fostering a healthier, more mobile and safer city. With more than 20 million people living in its metropolitan area, a geographical bowl ringed by mountains, Mexico City has long struggled with air pollution. At times during the past 2 years, ozone concentration levels in the city reached such high extreme levels that officials issued environmental risk alerts urging people to stay indoors. In 2017, the country's environmental secretary implemented a national strategy for air quality to coordinate the response of various government agencies to the pollution. New emission standards for engines used in heavy-duty vehicles were adopted by the Mexican government in what has been called the single most critical policy to reduce black carbon emissions. Soot-free buses started operating this year on Mexico City historic Reforma Avenue.
Nice to meet you, sir. I'm Natalia Nader. I'm from Colombia. I've been studying here for 2 years. My major is IHM. My friend?
Major is IBM. IHM, International Hotel Management, and International Business Management. Okay.
So we will be asking you a couple of questions for our assignment and for our course, BUS409, Cross-Cultural Management. So could you please introduce yourself to us?
Yes, to the camera, to you. My name is Jorrit van der Woude, but my nickname is Jerry, that's easier. Short introduction about myself. I grew up mostly in Malaysia, international upbringing. My dad worked for Shell, he retired early and stopped started work again because it was fun. And stopped 2 years ago. So I had a very mobile childhood in the cultural sense. Lived in Germany, in Scotland, mostly Malaysia. So, and from there we went back to the Netherlands for my sister and my study. And I started working in hotel management, catering, and from there into telecom business, telecom management. And then I went into real estate project development management, really high stress job. And then I went into teaching at an international university in the Netherlands. And from there we moved to their campus here in Thailand. And from there I moved to Stamford. That's where I am now.
Wow, you changed very different jobs, right?
That's right, that's right. Yeah.
So, what is culture for you?
What is
Cultural diversity, basically.
What is cultural diversity for me? That's a very
very broad question, actually.
Yeah, it's a very broad question, but it does narrow down to basic theories like, and this is also related to from when I was very small. Like the first awareness you have is religion, ethnicity, ethnics, different racial backgrounds, norms and values that are taught from tribes even. That I grew up in Malaysia, there was a first awareness that hey, there are tribes in the forest. So that's very broad. Yeah.
So how do you think being culturally exposed has changed yourself, the way you are? Has impacted yourself in a certain degree?
If cultural exposure has changed myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at a very early age I noticed like the origin is Dutch. But from a very early age you get so many influences that you know the Dutch can be very direct, very blunt. I mean that's a stereotype of the Dutch. That was something that was literally de-learned by my parents while growing up. Like no, we have to adapt in our culture. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Following that,
from that, I'll go to this question. How do you manage diversity effectively?
How do you manage diversity effectively? From my experience, this is practical experience, this is not technical experience. Observing people in a multinational company from other cultures and see the interaction, how they interact with the host culture. Maybe a nice sidestep in this to make how to manage diversity from a cultural perspective, and that's taking into account theories like Hofstede. You've learned about, probably heard about. Those are very rigid, to my idea, rigid theories. And about 10 years ago, a friend of mine advised me a book which is called Third Culture Kids. It's very interesting to read. I don't know if you've ever read it. Third Culture Kids. So what you see is through globalization. When I started traveling, I had from Amsterdam to Malaysia, Borneo. It took us nearly 2 days, and we had 5 stops in between. So now you have one direct flight. So that illustrates globalization. So at that time it was third culture kids, but now globalization is steep on the increase. Travel movements are getting are growing. You see that this concept of third culture kids is becoming third culture people. I teach this also in classes in terms of cultural awareness. That third culture means you have your host culture, you have your own culture that you brought up with. For me, that is probably the more or less the Netherlands, Western style, and the host culture. And they tend to overlap at some time. That's where you get a third culture. So this is getting more and more complex with globalization and people traveling around so much.
It's a mix of both.
Yeah. So back to your question, can you repeat that?
How do you manage diversity effectively?
How do you manage diversity effectively? I take this into account very much, a third culture, in managing diversity effectively. And in that, coming back to that first, observing how other cultures interact. Secondly, listening rather than talking. You know, it's the most powerful tool I think you can have to
Going
analyze.
back to that, how did you adapt yourself? So, like, because I've talked to Mr. Ricardo about that with the Thai culture.
Thai culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was the impact, and how did you, like, because at the beginning probably you were observing them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how was it?
Was there a cultural shock?
Of course, yeah. In every culture, I've experienced culture shock to some extent, but the blow, I think, because of my childhood, is a bit dampened, lessened. But I remember when I came to Thailand for the first time, the first personal culture shock in Thailand was coming to a country where you could not really read science. That was in the south of Thailand. I was there for a real estate project I was in Malaysia, and a friend of mine had a big real estate project in Krabi. He said, why don't you come along and use your expertise? Across the border, just by public transport. And that was my first culture shock. Okay, I understand everybody here. And then going into a work situation here for the Dutch University, that partnered up with the Randstad University. The first culture shock came from observation again in a management meeting. This is an example I also use in my classes. You were in a meeting room like this, and the Dutch, like I said, are very used to being direct, and it's not being blunt at all, it's completely accepted.
Diplomacy is not very
Diplomacy and in Thai they say "om pai om ma," you know, like
zigzag.
you
You're
zigzag.
always straight.
No, I might have a problem. You don't talk straight. So, but we're sitting at a meeting table, and a very blunt, to put it that way, Dutch colleague of mine, who was in charge of one of the programs, confronted one of the Thai colleagues and said, so let's call him some child just for privacy matters. Something you are not doing a good, you're not getting a good score for your subject. This doesn't look good. What are you going to do about it? And being used to Southeast Asian non-direct comments, I was going like, oh, what are you doing? This is not done. And you could see the shame and loss of face. This guy, so I observed that. So it was an outside looking in, or outside looking in culture shock for me. So I noticed in Thailand things were different. There was more time for interacting during lunch, during social events. That's important. Yeah.
So the question I'm going to ask now is more about going to the workplace. So how do you evaluate success and failure when it comes to a workplace, and also how managing diversity? Sometimes some managers, for example, different countries, right? In Asia, that's a stereotype that they have, right? That there is a big, how can I say, distance, power distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
In other countries is different, right? So, and some other managers, they fail to manage different diverse groups because they don't know which way or how to manage a group that is so diverse. They don't know which strategy to use.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us a bit more, like, from your point of view and from your experience, what defines a manager to be a successful manager, and what defines a manager to be a failure manager?
In terms of managing culture and diversity.
And what can you tell us, like, things that we should avoid as well when it comes to working our colleagues and things like that?
Process assessing the question, I think for me, it very simply boils down to something I've said already in this interview, is being a good listener and observer. And from that naturally, of course, being a good listener, being a good observer, and having a high emotional coefficient, so that you are aware of feelings, of other perceptions. One of my favorite sayings is, perception is reality and facts are irrelevant. don't know if you get that straight away, but
Yeah.
if you've got this perception here and this perception here, and you've got the facts in the middle, and they don't meet, there's no common ground. So, coming back to that question, finding common ground by observing and listening, I think it's the most crucial for success. If you don't do that, and go from your own home culture perspective only, which I observed from an early age also.
What do you think managers they fail to manage a group? It can be also a group that is not even diverse, a normal group. A group that is like people from the same country or for maybe same continent, same culture.
Okay, so this is a question general management, not cultural diversity management.
Going more to the moving a bit more.
Not listening. Yeah, that's my experience. When I started managing when I was 26, catering manager, started off with 40, 50 employees. My biggest mistake in the beginning was not listening, just going only for the operational goals, and not listening to people what they said. So listening is for me the key crucial factor.
Yeah. Let me move to this question. Could you share with us a difficult work situation that you have encountered in regards to cultural diversity?
A difficult work situation in terms of cultural diversity.
From your personal experience that you've encountered?
Yeah, I think the best I can take into account here, because we're of course, in the university and your students, so I think this example will set ground, if you like. This was in Holland. I was doing problem-based learning. That's basically the camera cannot see this table here, but it's being in a meeting situation with 12 to 15 students. One is the chairperson, one is the scribe, one is in that setting, and I was a tutor. And at that time, the influx from students from abroad was on the rise, right? So we had a lot of students from China, Asia, South Asia coming in, and we had also a lot of students from Germany coming in. So literally, what you always see happening, which you are sure at Stamford also happens, you have these groups, stick together. Germans stick together, Asian or Chinese, or they stick together, and they were literally across each other from the table. And so this was the biggest problem I had encountered, and I had to intervene quite harshly. Because what I noticed from my upbringing and from schooling, that the students from China and I think from Malaysia as well, they were very quiet, but I could see that their preparation was perfect, but they were not used to speaking up and taking their ground. Well, the other side of the table, and this is a bit of stereotyping to illustrate it, we had students from Western countries, Germany, US, and they were bringing in all kinds of stuff just free-flowing from their minds, but not factual. So, and they were going on, and so I had to stop the process, and I literally said, this side of the table, just shut up for a moment, respectfully, and listen to what the other side of the table has to say. And then the communication became, and said, see, these are good facts. And then the sharing started. So,
well, actually, some of the questions you have already answered along the way.
yeah, that happens in interviews.
I want to ask more over here. You as a lecturer, how do you manage students knowing that they come from a different cultural background and beliefs, right? Because as you said before, normally here I can see as a student, I can also perceive that students from different cultures, they try to stick to the groups, right?
That's cool.
And then how do you integrate everybody to work together? Because it's quite hard, even for us to be friends or try to talk with somebody else from another culture, right? Like you as a teacher, how do you manage to try to integrate all together and work as a group, as a team?
Within the setting at Stamford here, that's more of a challenge because it's more lecture based. When I get into smaller group based learning, I tend to connect in set people up by small exercises with drawing numbers. So students getting out of their comfort zone by simple techniques and having to work with others, like that happens in work situations as well. Suddenly you're at the table with people from 4 different countries and you have to interact. So that's the way in smaller group settings I'm trying to, and I've successfully tried to mingle more.
But mostly in smaller groups, right?
Smaller groups, yeah. For big groups, that's a challenge. I mean, imagine having an auditorium full of different nationalities and cultures. To find a common denominator in that, that's nearly impossible. Yes.
So I have another question. Maybe I don't know if you have thought about it, but how do you think we can maybe improve Stanford's university? I don't know, because we have a really good human resources, people from different cultural backgrounds. We have around more than 100-something students from different places, right? So how do you think Stanford could improve the human resources that we have here? Because probably sometimes we are lacking in that, right? Sometimes we are not using, we are not, for example, when there is a special festival about right now, or Ramadan is going on, we don't really, I don't know, we don't really show and we don't really like want to expose that to other students. We just let all those things pass by, right? Knowing that we have people from different countries, we can show other people from other countries as well their culture, that there is an opportunity to have classmates from different cultural backgrounds. So what do you think about that?
Okay, so basically what you're saying, you're seeing, you are observing as students something at Stanford that you think needs improvement in intercultural sense.
Yeah, exactly.
And your question to me is how?
Yeah, because
how
this is our student point of view, but from our teacher point of view, and of course I think, I don't know if that's also happening here in the 6th floor when it comes to teachers, how do you manage that? On how do you manage, what do you observe? And what are your points of views about that?
Points of view on how to get more cohesion again, I come to that this is partly intrinsic motivation that has to be fired up. And I think a group of students or a group of teachers can take the lead in that. So you need to fire up intrinsic motivation to know more about each other, right? And to, I would say, what I have also done in my previous job in teaching to facilitate this is when you're doing group work, for instance, not getting into the fact on digital communication, because it should bring together social media and digital communication, but it divides more. So through events, through stimulating intrinsic motivation to ask other people, like, hey, where are you from? What are you doing? This is what I also do myself when I'm in the elevator with a student I don't know. I always start talking like, who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing here? And it's nice. I mean, for a person as well, to know more.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
That's always interesting to know other cultures and everything.
Yeah.
Etc.
But it's true, like things like Ramadan and
Some people, they don't even know how many days or what's going on, and also this is a country that there's a Muslim population, right? And then there's also exchange students, so it would be great also from Stanford to show our exchange students that the culture that we have and the things that we are offering to our students. That would be great as well, but that's our student point of view.
Yeah, but I see what you mean, but from my experience also in multinational companies, and I've worked at two, and a big multinational experience from an early childhood, of course, is Shell Oil. It happens everywhere. It's nearly not avoidable. People always tend to get into their their home culture, where they're safe, where they feel safe and recognized. And it's also the point of intrinsic motivation, stepping out of your comfort zone and thinking like, yeah, this is something also I am working on constantly with others, because it doesn't finish in one day. Yeah.
So another question that we have over here is the 11 one.
Yeah, sure. or more for successfully managing diversity?
5 steps or 5 items?
Yeah.
Items that's...
5 items. I don't want to be boring, but these steps, there's...
Not 5, I mean I don't want to say give me 5 because
No, okay.
I don't know if you have 5 or 3, whatever you think you have, yeah.
Basically you're asking 5 things that are for me essential in managing or
It can be less.
cultural diversity.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
5 or less. Okay, but minimum 1 I suppose.
Yeah.
I would repeat again, listening, observing, reading up about it. Yeah, so listening, observing, reading up, studying about it. And then I would probably, the 4th one, avoiding the trap of modern day communication, social media. Go face to face. I see a lot of mistakes happening there, not only in students in work. I think this is what I feel very strong about, but meeting up face to face, not line communications on Facebook. Although they have their advantages. And then, okay, then I can sum up the 5th one, the awareness of the 3rd culture principle I briefly outlined, which is an interesting read and very practical approach to managing workforce diversity. Yeah?
And maybe, I would say, maybe not believing in stereotypes.
Stereotypes are very dangerous. Of course, ethnocentrism, the stereotyping, egocentrism is a very, very dangerous issue in the intercultural. Yeah. But that's why I mentioned again 3rd culture, because that makes you aware of, okay, these are our shared values and beliefs from my own culture and from my host culture.
It's a balance between them.
Yeah, 3rd culture.
This is another question that I have that I think as female I can see that normally happens. Well, thankfully this maybe last 5 years things have been changing. And how do you deal with gender differences in a workplace?
Gender differences in a workplace.
Yeah.
What specific issue are you addressing? Because there are many issues, and
there are
I'd like
many
to ask
issues.
them.
There are quite a few issues, but I wanted like ones that you have seen. Because I can ask you, there's plenty, right? But the ones that you have seen when it comes to gender differences that...
Well, if my free flow then from what you're saying, of course, my values are very much steered by my birth culture, which is Holland, and of course there's gender equality that's high in the agenda if you measure all the dimensions. So in that sense, from a personal level, I find it very important that gender equality on every level in any organization is at least on the agenda. But there are cultural situations that it can't be, that it's lower.
Yeah.
So that we need to
It depends on the culture as well, right?
Yeah, but does it answer your question?
Kind of.
Kind of.
I'm gonna have a follow-up question after that one hour at the same thing.
Okay.
So, have you ever encountered any gender differences in a workplace? It doesn't mean that you have to be managing, but you have seen that from your colleagues, and how it was managed or not managed at all.
Let's see, gender differences.
I mean, inequalities.
Yeah, kind of. What is gender differences?
Inequalities in gender.
Not really, right?
No, I'm thinking way back. There was one issue, but that was long ago. I was just about 25, 26 when I was in catering.
This year,
The stereotyping was like the guys in catering, they do bar work, and the ladies that go in short skirts and serve the people. Where some of my female friends said that's BS. Sorry to put it like that. I'm as good at the bar as you, and you saw that it was true. So that was one issue in work. Other issues in work, gender related. No, I think I've always been fortunate enough to work in an environment where gender inequality was never an issue. Yeah, so I cannot speak from no.
What do you think about the power distance between students and teachers here in Stamford? Is it a big power distance, or how do you think?
My observation and power distance between students and lecturers at Stamford, that's from my perspective and from my own experience, is low. I've done my master's degree at ABAC University, where I observed it was higher. Yeah, so I think here at Stamford, what I've observed, I don't think, based on my observation, power distance is low, approachable, and yeah, accessible.
And what do you think now that it's explored, it's a bit more secure?
Yeah.
Now we have to email and then we have to wait, call. Do you think that's going to kind of affect the communication between teachers and students? Because that suddenly changed. It wasn't something that because I've been here for almost 3 years, and then I always had quite good access with my teachers over here. So do you think that's going to affect the university somehow, the communication?
I think in the short run it does. I think in the long run it will work itself out. I have very two-sided thoughts on this. I very much enjoy having the door open and interaction freely and whenever students need it to be here. But with students' numbers growing and having to get all your work done, your administrative back office work, in a very noisy environment, since the doors have the lock, it's improved for me personally. Like, I think, oh, okay, I can be going. So that's.
Because before you said that, I had another point of view.
You did?
I did, but now that I heard this, okay, now I understand why.
Okay. Well,
okay, that's great.
This is the as far as I know, the basic concern that I mean, there are more teachers being employed. The sixth floor is getting very busy, and yeah, whenever I'm working with earplugs, and I'm thinking of buying very expensive sound cancellation headphones, but that's the reason. But interaction-wise, I'm absolutely on the same page. I love to be able to communicate with students whenever they need it and stop my work for it and do it. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions for us as young people trying to work in the future?
The suggestion I have, I would really advise you to read that book, Third Culture Kids, because it gives you a sort of comprehension. Okay, like it's not the classic Hofstede cultural dimensions only. They're useful building blocks, but third culture is getting more related to globalization. It's getting more and more important for you to understand in which work situation you come. And listening, observing, not just talking.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.